It is outrageous. What is happening in Los Angeles is a manufactured crisis by Trump, all done while flaunting the law. He is the one that conducted these massive raids without warrants, without names on these warrants. The protests were inevitable. And now, because the protests are happening, Trump sent in the National Guard without the governor's approval. On top of that, he's sending in the Marines and threatening to arrest a sitting governor. This is unprecedented, dangerous, and authoritarian. The presence of the National Guard and the Marines is meant to sow chaos. It escalates violence, not de-escalate. But de-escalation is what we need, and our local law enforcement is more than capable of doing that.
Here's the thing. The president has said he can't send in the guard without the governor's agreement, permission. The president has said, I don't know if I have to obey the Constitution. I hope the president would read Article 10 of the Constitution, and I urge all of you to do that as well, because Section 12046 of Article 10 says that the National Guard cannot be called up by the president without the consent of the governor. So that is the basis under which he's proceeding. That is the basis on which the governor of California is suing. Really, I think it's really important for people to know how this came to be. Raids that they were holding, situations where if your case is not settled, if you're still out there and haven't had a resolution of your status, you have to, by law, report in on a regular basis. You are obeying the law. And now they are deporting people for obeying the law. So as others have said, it's a distraction. It's really stupid, because we understand that we are a nation of immigrants. We want people to have a facilitation of their status. We do not want any violent protest, and that would be addressed for those who are acting violently.
Hi, Laura Friedman from Los Angeles. I just want to add a little anecdote about the effect of bringing the Marines in and bringing the National Guard in. So I'm a mom. I'm in a mom's group on Facebook. A bunch of non-political moms chatter about all kinds of stuff. Going into the weekend, the chatter turned to the raids. These are mostly American citizen moms, I'm assuming, in suburban Los Angeles, very concerned about the raids, felt it was inhumane, have seen kids pulled out of school. We saw a huge reduction of kids going to school in Los Angeles. So they wanted to help. They were asking, where do we go and protest? In the last day, the talk that I have seen in this group is that they're afraid of their own government. They haven't been saying they're afraid of the guys, of the bozos that we see throwing rocks, who need to go to jail, they need to get arrested, totally unacceptable, they're putting everyone in danger. But they're afraid that they're gonna get shot by the National Guard. They're asking each other, are the Marines gonna have live ammunition? Are they gonna be shooting into the crowd? There's an effect here of chilling Americans' ability to exercise their First Amendment rights and protest. This is a bunch of moms who want to support their undocumented community members who are now scared to go to protests here in America. That's the effect that these policies from this president are having on citizens. That should be a bigger story. And they're asking each other, is it safe to go? I just want to go and stand and hold a sign. Are they going to arrest me? Are they going to shoot at me? That should be something that gives all of us pause in this moment.
Let me just start with the mayor of Los Angeles and the governor of California actually messed around and found out. They messed around with the lives of Americans when they made their sanctuary cities safe for illegals. And they messed around when they also allowed violent protesters to attack law enforcement agents. Now they're finding out the hard way what it looks like to actually restore law and order. President Trump will not let the extreme and violent protesters tear our country apart. Burning cars, attacking police officers while wearing masks and waving other countries' flags. This will not be tolerated. To the Democrats calling these peaceful protests, shame on you. Do these look like peaceful protests to you? Looks like a place where you'd send your child, maybe Sunday school? Is there anyone in this room that can tell me this is what a peaceful protest looks like? Come on. We need to start correcting the truth with the other half of the truth and making the Democrats own this is a peaceful protest. Please. The Democrats are the ones responsible for this violence and lawlessness. Democrats have demonized law enforcement agents and ICE agents for years. They have enabled this unacceptable behavior. Remember, the Democrats are the ones that demanded that we defund the police. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you get when you defund the police. They are the ones who want to abolish ICE. Well, guess what? ICE is the one that protects us, for in the Democrats' eyes, these peaceful protests. ICE agents protect law-abiding American citizens. Gangs are a threat to our communities. ICE agents are on the front lines detaining and deporting violent, illegal aliens, many of whom, may I remind you, are sex offenders, murderers, human traffickers, and gang members.
There's a theme this morning. Rocks thrown at law enforcement. Cars and American flags set on fire. Fireworks thrown into the streets. Foreign flags waving proudly above our own. We are witnessing mayhem, chaos, and disorder in the streets of Los Angeles. All because the Trump administration is enforcing federal immigration law and protecting Californians where the previous administration and their local leaders have repeatedly failed. The violence against ICE officers can also clearly be attributed to the delusional, inflammatory rhetoric spawned by the left, including the words of my own incompetent and partisan governor, Timmy Walz, who recently called immigration authorities, quote, the modern-day Gestapo. With taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens and inflammatory rhetoric for law enforcement, Walz has turned my home state of Minnesota into a sanctuary state. And this week, he's going to answer to Congress for his failures. As Walz testifies before the House Oversight Committee on Thursday, House Republicans are working to mitigate the disastrous consequences of mass illegal immigration and the policies like Tim Walz who encourage it. Need to support our ICE agents and law enforcement officers on the ground with the tools they need to carry out their vital mission. That is why we must get the one big beautiful bill across the finish line. Our bill includes funding for 10,000 more ICE officers and HSI criminal investigators to protect our communities and at least 1 million deportations of illegal aliens annually. The time is now to restore law and order, enforce our nation's immigration laws, and hold leaders who are not leading, that refuse to lead, I should say, to do so and be accountable.
We talked a lot this morning about what's happening in Los Angeles because it is such a great exhibit to show what is happening. A picture's worth 10,000 words, of course. You know, while the rioters have been burning police cars and looting storefronts and physically assaulting law enforcement officers, it's important to remember how we got to this point, to this level of chaos, because this didn't happen overnight. 4 quick points to make us all remember. You know, we're in a busy news cycle and people sometimes forget the facts, but the Biden administration welcomed maybe as many as 20 million illegal aliens across that border and into our country in a 4-year period. Sanctuary states like California rolled out the welcome mat. They embraced it. They offered aliens protection from federal law enforcement. Think of it. They're on the wrong side of the law. And they provided them with health care and housing and taxpayer-funded benefits. It's truly almost unbelievable, incredible what these Democrat leaders of these cities and states have done. President Trump delivered on an ironclad mandate from the American people. And just as we said throughout the entire Biden administration disaster, the law always allowed the president to stop it. And President Trump did it with bold visionary leadership. He stopped the invasion of our country, and he engaged in the largest mass deportation effort in U.S. history. We're in the midst of that right now. Rioters, acting on the words of politicians like AOC and Hakeem Jeffries, are trying to stop this effort by burning storefronts and endangering the lives of patriotic law enforcement officers. The contrast could not be any more clear. Time and time again, innocent, hardworking Americans have been harmed by the failed leadership of Democrat governors like Gavin Newsom. President Trump was absolutely right to send in the National Guard and to clean up for the governor's failures. You know, Gavin Newsom's been in this effort for the last several months to try to reinvent himself, to rebrand himself, okay? It's pretty difficult to do when your state is a safe haven to violent, criminal, illegal aliens, and you're the one at the helm. You can't hide this stuff. The President of the United States has a responsibility to maintain law and order, particularly when the lives and livelihoods of federal law enforcement officers are threatened. What we're doing there with the federal forces is we are protecting federal buildings and property and personnel. And the President is showing strong leadership in doing so. Because, you know, it's those men and women, the federal law enforcement officers, who deserve our support right now. And the One Big Beautiful Bill, by the way, as Leader Scalise noted, delivers much needed reinforcements. In this bill, we have funding to hire a minimum of 10,000 new ICE agents. We're going to provide a $10,000 bonus to Border Patrol and ICE agents on the front lines. We're going to include $45 billion to expand ICE detention capacity and $14.4 billion for air and ground transport to carry out at least 1 million deportations every single year. We'll have to do that for quite some time because they let so many people in. We're starting with the dangerous illegal aliens, and that is exactly who the rioters and the politicians in California are trying to protect, and it's incredible. While Republicans are supporting the men and women of ICE through the One Big Beautiful Bill, Democrats are fighting for those illegal aliens and against law enforcement agents. They're defending the violent anti-ICE protesters in LA. They visited a violent MS-13 gang member and human trafficker in El Salvador. They charged an ICE facility and clashed with ICE officers. That was members of the House of Representatives doing that. They're advocating for people to dox ICE agents and making them targets for threats from radicals. And they're calling for the elimination of ICE. Don't forget what ICE stands for. People get caught up in the acronyms or lost in the acronyms. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, okay? It is to enforce federal law. It is to enforce a secure border. And the Democrats want to defund that. Just let that settle on you a bit. They're even trying to hide it, and they're not even trying to hide it, okay? They're openly advocating for illegals instead of American citizens. I don't know, we could talk about this all morning, and we have. Let me move on. Let me take a few questions. Front row.
Speaker Johnson, the president said, possibly in jest, that if he were Tom Homan, he would arrest Gavin Newsom. Do you believe that Newsom should face consequences in a legal way?
Look, that's not my lane. I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered, I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of the administration and the carrying out of federal law, right? He is applauding the bad guys and standing in the way of the good guys. He is trying to, he's a participant, an accomplice in our federal law enforcement agents being not just disrespected, but assaulted. This is a serious problem, and the governor is now filing a lawsuit against the president. What a joke. Do your job, man. That's what I tell Gavin Newsom. Do your job. Stop working on your rebranding and be a governor. Stand up for the rule of law. He's not doing that. So I don't know what the ultimate measure will be there, but I know that in the interim time, the President of the United States is showing real leadership, and we're not going to allow LA to burn. We've seen this movie before, right? This thing gets out of hand real quickly, especially in a big city like that. And if local and state officials are unwilling or unable to do their job, the President of the United States will do his, and we support that fully.
Hi, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or KPAK. I'm proud to join my Tri-Caucus colleagues here today, chairs Yvette Clark and Adriano Espaillat, to stand up for immigrants and stand against this Trump administration's attacks on our neighbors, our loved ones, and our friends. Like millions of Americans across the country, I'm deeply concerned by the administration's use of aggressive tactics against our immigrant communities. Armed agents have raided schools, workplaces, and homes, terrorizing our neighbors and literally ripping families apart. These stories are heartbreaking. You've heard some of them. A 4-year-old citizen, U.S. citizen, who was receiving treatment for stage 4 cancer was deported after showing up for a routine check-in. And child's birthday party in Texas was raided by federal authorities with flashbang grenades. As a mom, I can't even imagine how traumatizing that must have been for these kids. These are not the criminals the administration claims they are. They are our neighbors, our friends, and loved ones who work hard, pay their taxes, and contribute to our country. The Department of Homeland Security should use its limited resources to address serious national security threats and fix our broken immigration system. Instead, President Trump continues to escalate tensions and even deployed 2,000 plus National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles, despite the sitting California governor's objections. This is not about public safety. This is about exerting control and striking more fear in our immigrant communities. Threatening to send troops into neighborhoods, especially against the state governor's wishes, is an abuse of power that will undermine the National Guard's mission, erode trust, and put more people in harm's way. This military action is coming from the same president who refused to deploy the National Guard on January 6th, when there was more violent protests already happening right here. My colleagues and I were trapped in the Capitol while brave law enforcement officers here put their lives on the line to protect us from violent insurrectionists. And I remember getting the message very soon that no, the president will not be sending the National Guard. Let me be clear, Americans have a constitutional right to protest peacefully and to demand justice and due process for their neighbors, especially when the federal government fails to uphold these principles. As members of Congress, we have been exercising our legal authority to conduct oversight of detention centers and demand accountability from the administration. We stand in solidarity with the immigrants who make America great, and our country is made stronger because of them. And we will continue to fight for immigration policies that reflect our nation's values of fairness and dignity for all, not cruelty disguised as law and order. Thank you, and I yield back to Chair Clark.
So I'm going to talk about the National Guard first. The legal authority Trump is using is 10 U.S.C. Section 12406. I encourage all of you to read it. It very specifically says the only way he can do this is through the orders of the governors of the states. Governor Newsom clearly has not given this order. The National Guard troops are following unlawful orders. I ask every National Guard person who is under this order to read the order, to see if it came from Governor Newsom, and then to read the law, and then decide for themselves if they are following unlawful orders. Also turns out that when Secretary Hegseth ordered this deployment and carrying out those orders, he put all these troops into Southern California without federal funding for food, water, fuel, equipment. They were sleeping on the floor. They were sleeping on each other. It is a complete mess. Secretary Hegseth's repeated incompetence is next level. He needs to resign. And then in terms of the Marine deployment, we should not be deploying Marines against Americans. Marines are trained to kill the enemy. What are they going to do at this protest? I mean, are they going to shoot protesters? What exactly is their role? They are not trained to do crowd control. They are not trained to handle these kinds of situations. They are not trained for law enforcement. So I asked the president to rescind his orders. He's being needlessly provocative and inflammatory.
Thank you. We've seen Democrats give some contradictory views on the LA riots. We have Senator John Fetterman, who has called them anarchy and true chaos, and we have Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who's denied that any violence has taken place. How would you characterize what we're seeing from these individuals in LA right now with Waymos lit on fire and stores looted and things of that nature?
Here's the reality. Local authorities have this under control. There are a couple square blocks where a police presence is needed. A police presence, not a military presence, a police presence might be needed. And that should be the focus of local law enforcement. What Donald Trump is doing is inflaming those tensions. But as the vice chair said, anyone who is lawless or loots or commits a crime should be punished. That is the House Democratic Caucus position. What we do believe is in peaceful protest and in people being able to exercise their ability to observe ICE agents carrying on their activity, as well as standing on a street corner and holding a sign and speaking out and speaking their mind. That is completely appropriate activity. And what Donald Trump is doing is inflaming that by sending in the Marines and by mobilizing the National Guard under dubious legal rationale, as the vice chair mentioned. But I would argue, listen to the LA members. I'm from Southern California. I'll defer to my colleague who represents LA County. But this is something that local law enforcement clearly has under control, and the images on TV keep showing the same, burning car over and over. 99% of the city is moving on just as business as usual.
I'm glad you brought up the burning cars. So burning Waymo cars is despicable, and I urge that those folks be prosecuted who engage in that action. The National Guard could have done nothing about it because the unlawful orders they were given say they are to protect federal property, federal buildings, and federal personnel. That has nothing to do with Waymo cars. So even if they were right there at the scene, there was literally nothing they could have done without violating their orders. And let's say Marines at the scene. What would you want these Marines to do? Like shoot these people? It's ridiculous to have Marines there. This is a law enforcement activity that should be handled by state and local law enforcement, not the United States Marines. They are not trained to do this.
Know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. There are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our ICE agents on the ground.
You should check
It's
with your
true
office.
every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops and what they're doing to defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this secretary and the chairman and our
How long will
department.
the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days. Because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere. We're here to maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement officers in Los Angeles, which Gavin Newsom won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to LA, and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish
Before
my
I hand it to
question, such as updates, housing and barracks?
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
I'm just asking.
Bryn can give you the numbers, absolutely.
So the current estimated cost is $134 million, which is largely just TDY costs, travel, housing, food, et cetera.
Where's it coming from? That's the cost, but where's it coming from?
Out of their O&M accounts.
With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in LA? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to protect federal agents in their job, which is exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it.
10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the president used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard. invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all three to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's the problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The president, you said all
The
three
governor
apply.
of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well, so this just goes into the same fund, 134. What did
Congressman,
you
what's the
indicate, 134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the
So
border.
the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President. Will you invoke the Insurrection Act to deal with the situation in California?
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see, but I can tell you last night was terrible. The night before that was terrible. We have, as you've seen, it was on most of your networks, people with big, heavy hammers pounding the concrete and pounding curbs, pounding it, breaking up, and handing these big chunks of concrete to people. And they were taking that concrete, going up on bridges and dropping it into the roof of a car. They were throwing it at our police. They were throwing it at our soldiers that are there. And we got it stopped, and we have them in custody right now. Look, if we didn't get involved, right now, Los Angeles would be burning, just like it was burning a number of months ago.
How will you determine whether or not there is an insurrection?
Well,
And
you'll take a
also-
look at what's happening. I mean, I could tell you there were certain areas of Los Angeles that you could have called it an insurrection. It was terrible. But these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They get money. And when you take a look at what they do, where they show up and everyone's saying, what's he doing? He's pounding the curbs. This one guy's pounding the curb, breaking the curb, and handing big pieces of granite. In some cases, it's granite and concrete to other people. And they're running out with it. And then we watch the other people, and they try and throw it into the face of the soldiers, throw it into the face of the police, and they hurt some people very badly. They go up on bridges, they drop it down on the cars as the cars are moving. They're not breaking the curb because they're doing a demolition service. They're breaking it to hand out to people as a weapon. It's bad stuff. I've never seen that before.
And so I am calling on business leaders, community leaders, faith leaders to come together downtown in the next few days to talk about how we are going to clean up the city. Obviously, city workers are already out there removing the graffiti, but this is so extensive, it's going to take community-wide involvement. We had launched a program called Shine LA a couple of months ago in preparation for the World Cup, and now we are called on to direct that citywide. We need people from all over the city to come to downtown and to help with this effort. The staff, the mayoral staff standing behind me, represent the best of our organizers and community liaisons, and they will be leading that effort. I do want to go back and say that, just go back in time a minute. On Thursday of last week, Los Angeles was peaceful. There was nothing going on here that warranted the federal intervention that took place the very next day. If we want to look at the cause of what is happening here, I take it back to raids that took place on Friday and the uncertainty and the fear and the fact that families across the city are terrified that they don't know if they should go to work, they don't know if they should go to school. We have people that were detained. We don't even know the exact numbers of the people that were detained. We have people that have not had contact with legal representation, nor have they even had contact with their families. And so there is an awful lot of concern. When the administration started, they said that this was about crime. They were going to go after violent felons, drug dealers, and I don't know how that matches with the scenes that we saw of people in Home Depot running through the parking lot because they were afraid that they were going to get arrested. You are talking about people who are trying to survive day by day, which is what a day laborer is doing, and why they would be considered as part of a problem as opposed to contributing to our economy is very difficult for me to understand. We've also received reports of people who were here legally, who were showing up for their annual appointment at the immigration office and maybe even showing up with their family and getting detained. This is just absolutely unnecessary. People have asked me, what are the Marines going to do when they get here? That's a good question. I have no idea. The National Guard that are here now have one assignment, and that is to protect one building, which is the federal building downtown. The second building, which is the federal building on Westwood Boulevard. And as far as I know, nothing has happened in Westwood at all. So this was not needed. The idea that the administration would usurp the authority of our state government, take it away from our governor, Gavin Newsom. The governor knows that if we put a request in for the National Guard and it went to him, he would comply. There was never an issue there because we were never thinking about calling upon the National Guard. So I do want you to know that the violence that has happened has required LAPD to ask for additional assistance, but not from the federal government. We are a county of 88 cities. There's a number of police departments in those cities, and we have the sheriff's department. And so we have received assistance from the California Highway Patrol. I mentioned the sheriffs from Orange County, San Bernardino, Riverside, Santa Barbara, Ventura County, and a number of law enforcement departments around the county. So with them being fully deployed now, we're establishing a unified command under LAPD and Chief McDonnell, which will accelerate our ability to respond to hotspots when people splinter off and create pockets of trouble. So I do want to thank all the officers who've been working tirelessly and putting themselves at risk to keep our city safe. But the real solution of all of this is for the administration to stop the raids. We have heard that these raids might take place for the next 30 days. We don't know how many are going to take place in a given day. And you just think about the disruption to families and the disruption to our local economy. You might have a mother who goes to work in someone's home doing childcare or taking care of the household, a father who is the gardener or doing landscaping, people who are working in factories, and people without documents who are running small businesses, contributing to our economy in every step of the way. So I just want to conclude by saying we are 12 months away from the World Cup. We need the administration to help us prepare. They are talking about spending over $100 million with this deployment, which is why I say that I feel like we've all been in Los Angeles a part of a grand experiment to see what happens when the federal government decides they want to roll up on a state or roll up on a city and take over.